The sweet scent of golden corn and heady aroma of cilantro wove its way through the air and around Joanna's head as she bent over the hot, open oven door. She breathed in deep, then shut the door again. It would be ready soon, and she couldn't wait for the guests to arrive. Corn off the cob and refried beans dusted with grated cheese were only two of the dishes that she'd be serving at this month's potluck. There was also shredded pork, Mexican rice, and an assortment of fresh salads to go with their Mexican theme. She smiled at Emily, her in-home carer and unofficial sous chef, who was frying tortillas in an electric pan on the other side of the kitchen island. "How's it going over there?" Emily tucked a strand of her long, straight brown hair behind her ear. Her brow creased. "I think... good. I'm not sure. Do you want to take a look?" Joanna strode around the outside of the island, lifted the edge of the foil, and studied the pile of tortillas on a large plate. "They look great. You're doing a fantastic job. Well done, sous chef." Emily grinned with pride. "Thanks, chef." The monthly gathering of what Joanna impulsively called the Sunshine Potluck Society had become a staple in her life. In fact, it was more than a staple. It was her life. Her children had moved away years earlier, and they were busy with their careers and families. When Ron passed a decade ago, she'd taken to spending more and more of her time indoors until finally, 3 years ago, she realized she hadn't stepped a foot outside of her front yard in 6 months. These days, she tried to go somewhere once a month, but the effort usually left her feeling worn out. And she much preferred to stay in. It was safe in her home, warm and cozy. She ordered her groceries online, and just about anything else she wanted could be delivered. Still, she realized that it wasn't a good thing for her to always be cooped up in the house alone. That was when she'd finally decided to hire an in-home carer. Someone who could help her around the house and make sure she took her medication, give some form of social interaction and a much-needed hand in the kitchen. Emily hadn't come highly recommended. In fact, most of the people in her life told her she was crazy to give someone like Emily a chance. Her resume was non-existent. Emily had grown up in Sunshine, just as Joanna had, on Bribie Island's eastern shore. But for some reason, none of them knew much about her, and she seemed to mostly keep to herself. Still, Joanna had liked the young woman right off the bat, and so she decided not to hire someone with in-home care experience, but instead go for the unknown, which had been a risky move at the time, but had paid off in spades. Emily had turned out to be the exact right person for the job. The two of them got along well. Emily was a hard worker, and Joanna couldn't be more pleased with the choice she'd made. Emily was 23 years old, which was exactly the kind of youthful antidote to aging that Joanna wanted. At 60, she had slowed down a little, but she didn't want to give up just yet, even if she struggled more and more to get away from the four walls of her home. And she liked to think that Emily's exuberance for life and positivity kept her young at heart and gave her hope that she could someday do something like take a walk on the open beach again. At least, Emily always told her she'd do it. "Someday," she'd say, "you're going to walk down that beach. You'll feel the wind in your hair, the open sky above you, and you'll be happy. I promise." Joanna clung to those words, even as they scared her. But the fact that Emily believed her promise gave Joanna the strength to believe it as well. Emily slid a piece of pulled pork into her mouth as she waited for the next tortilla to fry. It's delicious. Will you include this recipe in your next cookbook?"